started as a computer programmer. I have graduated with a Bachelor of Science, a computer science degree, and worked as a programmer for a few years when I understood that what I wanted to do is actually create the conversation and the story around the technology instead of the technology itself. So I then found my way into marketing and business development in tech, and I had been working in that space for close to 20 years. And recently, around 2022, I've decided to embark on a new path and to leave my old corporate life as a chief marketing officer of startups and global companies all around the world. And I've decided to become a journalist and have a podcast because I felt like the gap in the media is so large, and the stuff that we are being told is so partial or wrong or just full of lies. And so I felt that urge to fill that gap and become part of what's called today the alternative media. And, that was at the same time where I was discovering Bitcoin, more or less 2022, which is a decentralized technology. And so I was kind of looking at how I can decentralize more and more of my life. And so, you and I spoke on my podcast about the fact that I have a second citizenship as well. So that's like a type of decentralization for me. I also decentralize my money. I decentralize my media. So I have so many different channels and platforms. And I try to create content, even if it's one platform, then repurpose it everywhere else. So even if I'm censored, it's very hard to take down all of my content in all of my channels. So I try to live a life that is as decentralized as possible in various different ways. Also in terms of health, this is another topic. COVID really brought that change for me. And so since COVID, I was really eager to learn as much as I can about the allopathic medicine versus what's called today the alternative medicine, which is, I think, the real medicine, right? And then try to have a decentralized lifestyle as much as possible in terms of the food and the products that I bring into my body and my life. So yeah, I think that's a really great way of framing the change that I had gone through. I really decided to just dedicate my life to be of service of humanity and create information and whether it's articles or podcast episodes or videos or anything I can, or do public speaking, and try and spread the message about the monetary system, about the truth in health, about different types of topics that are really close to my heart. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think COVID was a huge mistake on the globalist agenda because what it ended up doing was waking up so many people. And once there was something that they could so clearly point to as just an absolute fabrication on every level, and people realized that they were being lied to. And then it's like, wow, if I'm being lied to about this, what else am I being lied to? And then they started asking so many questions because you mentioned, okay, the monetary system and education and media and health and food and all of these things. And it's like all of these people have now seen one thing and now gone down the rabbit hole on multiple. And it's like, wow, there is a lot of lies out there. And, you know,
And to be honest,
depending
it's
on
not easy because you get overwhelmed when you realize
definitely.
that there is so much you need to unlearn and relearn. So
Well, mine is a little bit different because I left school at 12 years old because I was like, "Ooh, public education, this is a scam." And that was kind of like the beginning of my rabbit hole because of dyslexia and all of these types of things that I went through. But I think I was like one in a billion. I don't think anybody was coming to realizations of what a big scam everything was at such a young age. I think at the last 5 years, it's just been a huge awakening of people who went, holy moly, there's a lot that I don't understand. There's a lot that doesn't make sense. And there's a lot, as we said, that people are being lied to. And so it's very interesting that you came in from one side and now are looking at so many different aspects of it.
yeah, absolutely. And I really cherish and acknowledge those people that are like following me on all the different platforms and asking questions because they're asking the right questions. And I do have a lot of compassion for the fact that the average person cannot hold like huge amounts of information, of new information, especially not when life is so difficult these days, depending on where you're at in the world. And so you may be experiencing wars, you may be experiencing hyperinflation, you may be experiencing just a bad economical conditions or immigration or whatever it is that you're facing. You're probably facing not an easy life. And I mean, not everyone, thankfully, but many people. And so finding the headspace, the mental space, and even the spiritual space, the time to take to learn new topics is really challenging. And so one of my missions is really to try and make it as simple as possible for people to learn new things through my program or through my articles. And so one of the topics that I really like to explore, which is, I know it's very weird because it's not a fun topic to it's like a weird hobby to read white papers of central banks and then try and deliver that in a way that is simple and easy to understand. But that is one of my hobbies. So that's one of the things I do. I kind of spy after many central banks around the world and try to kind of understand what their plans are and what they're trying to bring about. And I summarize that for people in my articles, my public speaking, my podcast. And people get a lot of value from it because who wants to read a paper from a central bank? No one has that kind of dream. And that plus brilliant guests on my podcast, just like you know, that I speak to, that bring such gems to people that can really save them so much time. I mean, I think your conversation with me that we've done a few months ago got so many people interested in the whole topic of a second citizenship and preserving their wealth and how they can to everything we talked about, like the flag theory and everything. And so many people asked me questions, and even if they didn't take the action to go directly to you and ask your team for consultancy, they still open their heads to something
Amazing.
else, to another solution, right? And I think that that's one of the biggest pitfalls these days. When people are overwhelmed with information, they become so tired and a little bit resigned, and they go, no, that's too much, I can't handle it all. Like many people tell me, we see you talk about Bitcoin, it's so interesting, but it's too much for us to take. So, can we get the shortcut of it, the TLDR somewhere? And it's hard because you can't really get things without accepting that you have to invest some of your time or money or attention to a new topic. So you really need to want to do this. But once you decide that you're putting the effort into it, there is just so many great resources out there for you to learn from. It's much easier these days to learn without like a proper school or university than it used to
Exactly.
be in the past. So whatever you put your mind to, you can really get great information out there today in a super decentralized way. And I love that. So I think that if we're looking at how people can not only get overwhelmed and then stopped by it, but how can they then take a positive action for their lives and their family's life? They have to put aside that resignment and start looking for solutions, because I think that that's one of the biggest problems or pitfalls of the freedom movement or the community, where they focus too much on the problems. And I see a lot of documentaries coming
I've
out, a
seen
lot
this.
of Twitter feed, full of people highlighting the shit in the world and the problems. And I'm not saying it's not important to be aware. You want to be aware of what's coming, but you want to kind of divide your attention and time to put an end to absorbing that kind of content, and then look for solutions. Look for useful information and education that can actually help you change something meaningful in your life. Otherwise, you are wasting your time. You're in that loop, in that fear loop that they want you to be in. And that's not useful. That's not helpful.
I'm so glad you said that because that's really what we've built our entire business around is being the solution to the problems. Actually, if you're on our newsletter, you listen to this podcast, you join our webinars or come to our conferences, like all day, every day, all we're doing is like, here's the solution, here's the solution, here's the solution. Here's what you can actually do. Here's how to
Yep.
actually get a bank account or brokerage account or precious metals account. Here's how to actually have passive income through international real estate. Here's how to structure it. Here's how a trust works. Here's where
Yep.
we go. This is the lawyers we work for a family foundation or for these types of things, for the insurance. Everything is only solution focused. And actually, it's great because there are many websites. There's a million, hundreds of millions of websites out there that are highlighting the problems. There's very few people who are working on the solutions. How do we actually
Absolutely.
defend ourselves from what's happening?
That's exactly why I wanted you on the show the other day, because that's exactly the kind of stuff I'm looking for my audience. I don't just want to show them what's wrong and what's bad. That's easy. I want to actually open their minds to new ways of living, new ways of being. And your newsletter is awesome in that sense. The podcast, everything, the website. I'm on the newsletter, so I see it every day. There is fresh new information about a different place
Every
in the world
single
or a
day.
different
We're
topic.
on a
Yeah.
mission.
Oh, yeah,
We
I
do
know. You
new
guys
content
create a lot
daily.
of content. And it's fine. People can choose not to be part of this, but if they do want to change something in where they live or how they handle their finances or how they created a separate investment in another area of the world, they have a resource to come to. And I think that that's what people need these days. Like, seriously, I don't want to name names, but I watched a documentary the other day with two friends of mine that was almost 2 hours. We gave it the time of day. We almost fell asleep. It doesn't matter, but it was like it was a well done kind of documentary. A lot of money spent on doing it, and the amount of people, my followers or subscribers, that have sent me that documentary telling me you got to watch that was insane. So I did. But there was nothing, zero, Mikkel, in that documentary that was showing people the light, showing them a way that they can actually help themselves from all this doom and gloom. What good is it? Why waste those 2 hours? I mean, yes, sure, if you want to really go to the nitty gritty, the details of what is happening and how the system works, fair enough. But once you got it, it's like you don't need to spend so much more time on it. Let me TLDR it for you. Life sucks at the moment, right? Now you want to help yourself.
For sure. No, I think that it's super important what you're saying because there are different roles that we have in the world. Like I know what my role is, and it sounds like you've definitely discovered yours. And that's why I'm so thankful that you do the work that you do. So that, to be honest with you, I don't have time to read through every single central bank's digital currency outlook and plans and things like that. And then to be able to discuss with you and I want to get into the meat of it actually. Let's
Yeah.
dive into these things right now. But I have my piece of the puzzle to play, and it's like, okay, I developed the systems and the processes and the legal framework to defend about what's happening in the world, but I can't follow every single country's CBDC and what's happening and anything like that. So let's pivot a little bit and let's kind of give an overview of what is happening as we're recording this July of 2025.
Okay, no problem. So, just a bit of context. So, 81 years ago, you probably have heard of this. There was a pact or an agreement signed called the Bretton Woods Agreement in New Hampshire in the US. And that's where the countries that got together decided that the world empire is going to be the US and the US dollar is going to be the world's reserve currency. And Bretton Woods essentially architected the blueprint for how the world would operate money for the next decades. And historically, every 80 to 110 years, we see a change in world empires. At the end of every cycle, we normally experience, I mean, people remember or just think that the US has always been the world empire, but it wasn't. There was Portugal and Netherlands and many other countries that have taken the role of being the world empire and the world's reserve currency at that time. So normally it comes together. And in that switch between between empires, we always experience crises, emergencies, pandemics, and wars. Sounds familiar, right? This is like what we're experiencing now. So this is what people call oftentimes the end of the fourth turning. And the real question is, will the US and the US dollar maintain their position in the next cycle? Or is it going to end and be delivered to someone else? And I personally do believe that's the intention of the US, and as the world enters the truly digital age of money. Because you can argue that the money is already digital these days. If people know how the fiat system works, it really is already digital. I mean, your credit cards and bank accounts and everything, they are lines of digital code. And when you ask to transfer money from one place to another, it's not that the actual physical money is moving, it is digital. However, the big difference is that the world is turning the monetary system from a fiat system that is based on paper money to a fully digital system. And it's hard to say that it's going to be a full CBDC system, which I will define and we will talk about in a second, because it looks like the next few years are going to be spent in a process of different nation states or different blocks around the world kind of experimenting and discovering what kind of digital monetary system they want to have. It may be a CBDC, it may look a little different. In some countries, you may discover that they prefer to implement a stablecoin system, which will lead them to Bitcoin in the end as the world's reserve currency, or maybe it will be like some kind of hybrid between gold and Bitcoin, because they're both sound money. And so from my research, you can definitely see that different countries or different blocks are behaving in different ways. So I'm not putting my foot down and saying we are entering into a CBDC world, period. It's not that black and white, but certain countries or certain places around the world will definitely implement CBDCs of different flavors. There's also a difference between retail CBDC and wholesale CBDC, but we won't get into that nuance at the moment. But the important thing to understand is that that new digital financial system is definitely going to be quite different than what we had experienced until today. And if you are just a user of money rather than being one of the people creating it, or a government or a nation state, then you are going to feel the difference, but the way you're going to feel it is mostly in the level of control and surveillance that the government may have on your financial transactions and your financial freedom. And now you can say that, I mean, I'm always taking both sides, right? So you can say that we already don't have privacy or financial freedom really in the West, because governments are able to debank us, right, or to kind of freeze our bank accounts, or surveil and ask for the bank to freeze certain transactions, or ask us to deliver documentation or reasons for why we want to get our money out of the bank and things like that. So to a large extent, we are already experiencing, especially in the US, we're experiencing a level of surveillance and control by the government. And if the government really wants to control what we do with our money, it can.